Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the deferred sales trust is an amazing way for you to exit highly appreciated assets, defer millions of dollars of capital gains tax, eliminate your state tax, and then invest into multiple asset types at any time so you can create and preserve more wealth. Hi, my name is Brett Swartz. In each and every episode, I'm joined by some of the best real estate, financial, wealth, and business minds in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspirations. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. I am excited about our next guest. He is out of the great state of Arizona, and he's recognized as an expert in the private debt industry since founding JB Capital in 2003. The company has become a reference for capital placement and advisory services in the U.S. and Canada, Canadian lower middle markets. Under this guest's leadership, JB Capital has raised and advised approximately $1 billion in capital for growth companies across the industry spectrum, and so much more. This guest has also been a contributor to CNBC, Bloomberg, and providing ongoing financial advice and board leadership to several well-known growth companies. Please welcome to the show with me, Jeremy B. Hill. Jeremy, how are we doing?
I'm good. This guy sounds great. I can't wait to meet him.
Yeah, and for our listeners, get to know you for the first time, because you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus.
Yeah, of course, buddy. I'll forego the born in a small town at a young age and wind beneath my wings crap and all that stuff. The quick story is I started a company called JB Capital, honestly, by kind of happy accident about 22 years ago. And for me and us and our family, it's thankfully become kind of a beautiful, happy accident. So years ago, when it is that we started, we were an independent investment bank and capital markets advisor, meaning that we were hired to go solve problems. And most of those problems had something to do with money. Your bank and your rich uncle won't call you back, and you need to figure out a way to, get your next product to market, or you need to figure out a way to pay off your wife or your ex-wife, or buy out your brother-in-law, or get the guy across the street, or fund this next, real estate development. And we just got really, really good at kind of turning all the different dials of the Rubik's Cube it is to get all the colors to match up to solve complex problems for these companies. Had a hell of a lot of fun. Did about $1 billion in transactions over that period of time, all in this kind of $5 to $25 million check size. About half of that $1 billion was real estate related transactions. So, a lot of our clients, early on were not, mom and dad with a Home Depot card and a hammer kind of a deal. And they weren't Toll Brothers. They weren't Hines. They weren't Beacon Properties. It was the guys that were kind of 50 to 500 units a year that needed differentiated capital. And we got really good at solving those problems. The other half of the folks were really kind of growing software technology, healthcare, health tech, direct to consumer businesses that, as this whole kind of world of private financing has changed, we really kind of disintermediated what it is that was happening with kind of the growth and influx and now kind of cratering of the venture debt markets. Venture capital kind of blooms off the rose there. Private equities become more institutional and kind of taking the place of the banks. And so there's this huge asset class of companies that are in this kind of $10 to $100 million that are underbanked and underfinanced. And we help those guys out. So we did about $1 billion there. About 4 years ago, I started investing more off my personal balance sheet and then raising funds alongside that. Now we have 3 funds in the market. It is that are really kind of tailored high net worth, and they're syndicated through Schwab and Fidelity and Goldman and all the different platforms. And we're investing and growing and trying to do good things. That's us.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. By the way, you can learn more about Jeremy B. Hill by going to jb-capital.com. That's jb-capital.com. So you touched on a number of things there, but I think one of the key ones was solving problems with wealth and movement of money. Yep. And that leads into our topic at hand, Jeremy, which is building wealth through lending capital. So besides solving problems, what would you say is the number one secret to building wealth through lending capital?
I think of the market it is that we have right now, and I know a lot of your audience is really tailored and focused around, all things real estate. And if we look historically over the last, 1,000+ years to present day, as real estate has really always been a cornerstone of a family or a generation's wealth, whether that's you and me family, whether it's institutional family or legacy families, it is through generations, have always had a cornerstone of their wealth built in real estate. The market right now in real estate, I think, is odd, right? We've seen amazing kind of run up in interest rates, but there seems to be functionally still a disconnect in where sellers of those assets have not necessarily acquiesced to the pricing in that market, and there's still a little bridge there that hasn't been done. So in my mind right now, with where it is that the economy is from a real estate standpoint, I would much rather be a lender than an equity participant. And so since those valuations are a little bit all over the board, your $5 or $10 million property today, it's worth 10 today, it's worth 14 next week, and it's worth 3 the week after, based upon decisions it is in DC, it is that we can't control. And so in that world, if I'm going to come in and invest in real estate, I would much rather be a lender, right? So I'm less, I guess, less susceptible to the varying tides of equity movement. So for us, whether it's on the corporate side or the real estate side, I look at credit or loans almost like a bit in a horse's mouth, right? Like it's this 8-inch piece of steel that I can control a 1,500-pound animal with. Like I don't have to own the horse to control the horse. And so for me, if you structure debt correctly, you can easily get equity level returns with all of the protections of being a lender. And that's kind of the approach it is that we are taking. It is to not only develop, our personal and familial wealth, but to do that for, the people it is that we partner and invest alongside.
Okay, so it sounds like understanding the very nature of where we're at in the market cycle, especially given where cap rates, interest rates are at right now, and just the risk that's associated with owning assets. I love the way you put it. Credit or loans are like a bit in a horse's mouth. You can control the entire animal, and in that sense that if you can take a good solid debt position and still get the equity returns that a lot of people are looking for, sure, right, or better, and you go, why, and less risk, why wouldn't you do that, right? And so that sounds like that's the first secret to this, is understanding the real estate to the debt relationship marketplace and the returns versus the risk. What would you say the next secret is there? Unless did I catch that right, the first part, Jeremy, or did you want to add to that or subtract?
No, I mean, I think that's useful, is just really functionally understanding, the time in the market. There may be times it is to where it is that you want to leverage up dramatically. It is because, you go back to a 3% interest rate, right? Or something like that. I mean, my family, we've just gone through the situation to where it is that we've formed our own kind of family, board and put all the trusts and stuff together. And one of the things that is we made a decision at is that sometime in the next 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, whenever it's going to be, I don't know. But if we ever get down to a point it is to where there is sub 3% interest rates again, I'm going to buy everything physically possible, whether it's an ice cream stand or an apartment building. We are going to acquire as much as possible until we get to that point in time. I think structuring things from a debt lens, just from all of the protections it is that it gives you, is probably a more prudent approach. And we're always eat your own dog food kind of guys, right? Like, I mean, we don't do anything it is that we're not doing ourselves.
Yeah. And so here's what I believe. I believe that timing is the single greatest important factor when it comes to investing, right? Time horizon, right? And the timing of things, right? So having time on your side changes everything. Here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions, we focus not only just on cash flow, but also on tax flow. And I think the big premise here that you're focusing on is debt flow, and trying to connect the dots here with timing being on your side. So how do you connect those three when exiting assets, when buying assets? You can talk about things like 1031 exchanges, things like ways to build wealth with that. What comes to mind when I say debt flow, tax flow, and cash flow?
Yes, right. There's probably better tax advisors than me. I definitely claim to be pretty good looking and really good at debt from a tax advisory standpoint. I'm not your guy. The things it is that I do know is that we do have a tax system. It's favorable for the folks it is that are wanting to and willing to own something. The 1031 side of things it is, and be able to cast that debt down. Love that. One of the things it is that we have seen a lot of times as we moved into more of this principal position in owning and managing funds, is that there is it's the best way of doing this, the underneath of things, right? So beyond the surface level of the tax advantages it is that you get, is functionally the project that you're investing in sound? Because otherwise it is, tax benefits don't always make tax benefits won't make a shitty project a good project, because you get tax benefits. If it's a crappy project, it's a crappy project, regardless of the inherent tax benefits it is that are there. So one of the things I think it is that you look at from a 1031, or some of these DST funds and things like that are out there, and Brett, you know more about this than me, I'm not pretending to be an expert, is make sure that functionally it is that the endeavor it is that you're investing in is sound, well beyond the inherent tax benefits it is that are usually the precipice of why people are investing.
I couldn't agree with you more. And this is part of why we offer the other DST for exactly that right there, because we believe there's times to have really wise debt. We call it smart debt. And there's times when there's dumb debt, right? Dumb debt is when you're overpaying for the property, the cash flow and the intrinsic value does not make a lot of sense, right? And now you're in a position where the rents or the value appreciation opportunity, you can't really force that. In other words, you're buying, let's say, at the height of the market, 2021, or in this scenario, 2006, right? If you go back to these places where you're going, this doesn't make sense. These values don't make sense, but people are chasing themselves in these 1031 exchanges because their timing is constrained, right? And their tax flow is driving their decisions, which their cash flow are shrinking. And now their debt flow becomes typically, most of the times you do these 1031s, you're taking even more debt on to chase the next deal. The point is the music stops and then people get hurt. And it's happening right now, right? Totally. For those who let the tax tail wag the investment dog. Now enter our strategy, Jeremy. I'm curious what you think about this. It's known as the other DST. It's known as a deferred sales trust. We've been telling our clients the last few years to sell high, pay off all of their debt, get out of debt, and put it into actually lending funds, all tax deferred, right? In fact, we placed about 30 million plus with one group in particular that's never not paid 10%, that has a 55% LTV on these deals. First positions with private individuals that have between $5 to $15 million net worth, personally guaranteeing the loans. They've never lost a single dollar. In other words, we love that investment, and we figured out a way to not have to use a 1031 to go into a lending fund, right? To do exactly what you're talking about. And we try to get the secret out, and we feel like we've been screaming from the top, we've been doing this now a while now, but I feel like most people just don't even know about it. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on a strategy like that?
I'm interested. As soon as we get offline, we're having a whiskey and talking about what we can do together. That sounds great. It's weird because what did you call it? A deferred sales trust.
A deferred sales trust. Mm-hmm.
Right. So rather than a typical DST of a Delaware statutory trust, right? The deferred sales trust. I like that, getting rid of the taxes and then moving into something that is it's income generating. So much of the problem it is that we've had, and a lot of the RAs and the guys that have custodied monies with us really don't understand the back end of this stuff, is that most of these 1031 funds and DST funds, they're paying 10% to the channel to get old rich guys dollars, RAs dollars, right? And so when you look at it, you're paying some BD 10% that shows up as a load to the fund in order to get in there. And then you wonder why it is that the returns of why the lockup is 7 to 10 years and why the returns of the funds are so shitty the first 3 years, is because they have to catch up all that cost of capital that it costs them to get your dollars. And so being able to remedy or remove that cost of customer acquisition and be smarter in that whole thing, if you figured out a way to do that, yes, I'll sing it from the rooftops with you.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, right? Because the Delaware Statutory Trust, we call those blockbuster methods. 1031 is blockbuster, and the Delaware blockbuster 1031 is another form of blockbuster, where you're forcing yourself on investment real estate to go into a passive deal, typically, right, with a proven operator that has beautiful properties, beautiful brochures, huge fees. I've heard as much as 14 to 15 cents of every dollar is on the load there, right? And the returns around maybe 5%. Let's just say that's the money, but you have no control, no liquidity, no diversification. They're typically tied up for 7 to 10 years. And you're right. Like, I call it sleepy mailbox money. Like, if you really just want to just completely not think about anything, this can be a decent thing. But if you look at inflation and where we're going, I can't do it. I mean, we still do them for sometimes. There's a place for them, by the way, debt over basis issues. to replace. They have Amazon coupon deals where 80% LTV, and we'll use that to replace the debt over basis and then put the rest of it into the deferred sales trust. And so it's really knowing the tool and what it's going to solve for. I just think sometimes people think the 1031 is the hammer that solves every problem. When you need a screwdriver, you need a chainsaw, you need something else, and they just keep thinking it's just this 1031 is the only way to do it. Let alone the Delaware and the 1031. As a reminder, everybody, it only works for investment real estate. It does not work for cryptocurrency. It does not work for business sales. It does not work for primary homes. It doesn't work for a lot of these deals that are a little more complex with multiple partners. We just did a $13 million exit for a client out in San Diego. And for them, Jeremy, they had 4 partners. One wanted out, and they buy land for about $500,000. They improve the property $3.5 million. So now they're in it at 4. They sell for 13.5, where they're in the business of developing, not in the business of buying $13.5 million car washes, right? They want to go develop them and make that gap there. And so the 1031 forces you to have to buy equal or greater value, go into perhaps bad debt at the time. And they're so happy now. We did this deal in about mid 2021. And they're thrilled. Like, they're out of debt. We're diversified. We're semi-liquid. A lot of the funds that we work with are either, you can put it in the stock market if you want. We're not big stock market people, but you can put it in T-bills at 5%. But you can get this safe harbor, and then you can invest when it makes sense, right? When the discounts of the values. I mean, 2008 to 2011, as you remember, Jeremy, it took 3 years for the real estate market to really drop, right, to its bottom. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I want to dive more into that, because it's everybody it is that we're looking at, right? And so if you are not taking a complete passive approach, it is to just, income investing, and you want something it is that's going to appreciate, like you're talking about. The challenge is that, okay, if you are, right, if you are as smart as you hope you are, and you do get the privilege of having that exit, it's, well, now what? Right. So like you said, in that 1031, it's got to be equal or greater. Well, what if I don't want to do equal or greater? I got to this $13 million exit for doing something at 3.5 that I created value in. I don't know if I want to take the same risk of trying to do something at 13 and get $50 million of value. That's a completely different set of skills. I just want to go do that $3.5 million thing over and over and over again. But now that I've got a $13 million win, I'm going to get penalized. That sucks. I don't want to do that. So if you guys have figured out a cool recipe there, I'll be the first one to buy your book if you'll sign it.
Yeah, we have it. By the way, we have experttaxsecrets.com. If you want to learn more about building we call it the best 1031 exit plan, where you have multiple options. We can save a failed 1031. But I think the important part here is to understand that debt flow, cash flow, and tax flow, they're not always equally aligned. Like, it's like to find it all aligned up, it's very difficult because timing is and restrictions and different things. And so you want to find a vehicle that helps to align these as much as you can. And so this has been our strategy, Jeremy. Literally, it's been sell everything you can before the crash. I mean, we thought, it was going to be definitely not a crash, but it's going to be a correction. We knew it was coming, and pay off all your debt and go into, our favorite has been multifamily lending. But it could also be, community housing, right? Like that's great. And then wait for the market to shift. Let me give you one other thought here, before we dive back into what you do, because I just think this is vital, because our favorite is investing with people like you, have a proven track record and are, committed to underwriting standards and all the things that you guys do in transparency, which I love. And just make the 8, 9, 10, maybe 13%, let's just say on average, right? And it's just sitting there, and then wait a couple of years, and then the money can go back into the trust, all tax deferred, and you can still go buy assets with it. Right. You can also diversify into the Delaware deals. If you really love that amazing, apartment complex community, you can still put a portion in that. You just not having to put all of it in all at once. You could buy, discounted stocks if you wanted to. You could buy cryptocurrency if you wanted to. We just did our first NFT deal last week. And I think this is one of the biggest opportunities. A lot of people in the crypto market, they are wanting to exit and get into real estate, hard assets. They're not big proponents of the stock market. So someone like yourself and myself connecting and showing them how to bridge that gap will encourage them. And a lot of them don't sell because of the tax, right? So we actually did 13 million of Bitcoin and Ethereum before the crash for 2 clients in California, before the crypto crash. And so, yeah, so if you guys want to learn more about that, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com or experttaxsecrets.com. That being said, Jeremy, let's dive back into like the type of deals you're underwriting the type of deals you're loaning to, and then the typical fund structure. So I guess it would be, timing, minimum investment, semi-liquidity. How does that all work?
Yeah, so we're equally split kind of on two sides, right? So we have a corporate credit side and we have a real estate credit side. So let's start for the real estate for your audience here. The fundamental shift it is that we've seen over the last kind of 12 to 15 months is we've seen basically deleveraging across banks and agency balance sheets across the board. So if the two of us, Brett and Jeremy, right, two wise guys, real estate, whether we're buying, building, developing, investing, otherwise, whatever our approach is, historically we were getting kind of 70 to 72% leverage, maybe a little bit better if we had a big balance sheet and a great relationship with our lender. That 70 to 72 went to high 60s, mid 60s, low 60s. Now is high 50s. Agency business, even for stabilized assets, is 50. So for those sponsors that thought they were bringing in $30, they're now bringing in 40 or 45 or 50. And so even for the largest, most experienced sponsors of multifamily or industrial or otherwise, that equity gap is painful, right? The reality is most bankers are not that smart, shitty as that is to say, right? And candidly, they don't have to be, right? Because if you're loaning 5.5% capital, you don't need to take much risk. Why would you try to have to underwrite? The challenge is for builders, developers, investors, if you've been going through a project for 2 or 3 years in entitlements to get it shovel ready, dirt ready, and now cap rates have changed, interest rates have changed, cost of capital has changed, you don't have the flexibility to just say, okay, well, I'll just go on hold for 2 years until the market corrects. This is, you can't swim halfway across the ocean, right? You're going to drown, right? So you got to make it to the other side. And so this ever-growing equity gap is becoming painful. So the strategy it is that we've had and that we've employed and been finding success with is really coming in and providing preferred equity into large sponsors of multifamily and industrial assets. Retail scares me to death. Office, I have no idea why anybody's coming out of the ground with new office, considering the world it is that we've been in. I think there's probably some opportunities in hospitality. I just don't know enough about it. The things it is that I do know is in the housing standpoint, we have a deficit to demand on housing from a unit standpoint. We have an availability issue and we have an affordability issue. And no matter who you are, where you work, how much money you make, or the car you drive, you need a place to lay your head, right? And so I see value there. From an industrial standpoint, too, we are seeing definitely a significant demand and kind of onshoring. We are seeing the Amazon effect and distribution effect with RDC's cold storage and warehouse all the way across the country in certain pockets. Arizona is probably one of the best in the entire country. And vacancy rates there are, sub 3%. So for us, when we're investing in those things, that's where it is that I'm investing. We invest only in a couple of markets in the real estate side. So I'm in about 12 states. We can invest anywhere across the country, but I kind of don't care about your apartment building in Cleveland. I'm sure it's awesome, just not for me. We're really looking at these markets to where it is that we're seeing not only kind of employment growth, but population migration, right? So we're kind of Washington, Oregon. We skip over California because it's basically become Venezuela. We look at Utah, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Texas, over across to the Sun Belt states, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, North and South Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee. These markets where historically they've probably been a B or a B plus market that are now having their kind of, day in the sunlight, right? Nashville, Asheville, Knoxville, Sarasota, Tampa, Atlanta, Dallas, Phoenix, Tucson, Salt Lake City. I love those markets are great. When you look at New York, New Jersey, Philly, Chicago, DC, San Francisco, these are not lender friendly states. Most of them are not even landlord friendly states, right? So I don't want to be there. And so for us, that's what it is that we're doing. We're writing 2 to 3 year paper, interest only, bullet maturity. We've got definitely secured, creditor rights, even in a preferred equity type structure. And our investors are making kind of 9 to 12% current. We do monthly distributions. What else can I tell you? Good, solid deals, right? The only funds I know of in the country that we don't leverage the fund, I don't sell my paper, and we don't even charge a management fee.
Okay, amazing. By the way, you can learn more about Jeremy B. Hill by going to jb-capital.com, jb-capital.com. So, yeah, I mean, all of the above, right? So the Sunshine States, yeah, we recently left California for a number of reasons. We still love California, it's home, but yeah, the government's failed us there. And so we've now moved to Florida, and it's great. So awesome. I agree with you on everything you're saying there. That makes sense to me. Now, as far as the you said it's a 2 to 3 year paper, but if someone comes into your fund, is there, hey, I raised my hand in 90 days, I if I needed some capital to go do something else, how does that work as far as if I'm coming in as an investor with $1 million and I might want to do a deal in 6 months myself, but I don't know until it comes up?
Yeah, totally. So what you're talking about is what's called a redemption policy, or how long are your funds locked up? And so for us in our structure, we have a 1-year lockup, and then we have quarterly redemptions available thereafter. And so one of the things, and Brett, you and I talked about this before, is you see some of the private equity type structures or OZs or DSTs. I mean, you'll have a 5 to 7 year lockup plus. All of our lives have looked different 5 years ago than they do today. I mean, like 5 years ago was pre-COVID. It was everybody leaving California and moving to Arizona. Like 5 years is a long time, right? And so that lockup doesn't make sense for most people because you can have significant life change over that period of time. So for us, we have a 1-year lockup, and then we have quarterly redemptions available thereafter. So one of the positions that we take is kind of a parity and alignment of interest between the parties. And so that's when you had heard me say earlier is that, we don't leverage our fund. I don't sell my paper. I don't charge a management fee. We don't have, catch-up provisions and clawback provisions and all this stuff it is that you see in most of these funds. One of the other things from a redemption policy standpoint is that at any point in time to where we have redemptions outstanding in any of our funds, we completely stop the operation of the fund. So we are no longer allowed to originate new credits, and we're no longer allowed to extend additional credit to an existing borrower until we first satisfy that redemption. So everybody talks about, the chicken and the egg and that kind of a thing. That's a ridiculous argument. Because the reality is you would not have a borrower until you first had an investor. And so your job, as a gentleman, a fiduciary, and I guess a proper individual is you serve your investors first. You do right by your borrowers. And if you do a good job of doing those two things, then we'll do okay too. The minute it is that any of those things are out of alignment, bad things happen. And so every fund manager out there it is that you're talking to, every RIA, every manager it is that's got this fund or that fund, all of them tells you our investors come first and, kumbaya, hold hands, it's going to be great. All of them say that their investors come first until you read their documents. And you realize that the manager is going to get paid regardless of the performance of the portfolio. And the reality is the investor comes last. That should be unacceptable. So we just do things different.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, Jeremy. I love everything you're saying. Jeremy B. Hill, go to jb-capital.com, jb-capital.com. Jeremy, that being said, we're running out of time. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Let's do it, man.
All right. Knowing what you know now, if you go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget make sure to tell yourself to do?
Believe in yourself a little bit more. I think it is that we give people more credit it is that they deserve, and we give ourselves less credit than we deserve. So I would say take more risks.
Love that. Second question, what's the number one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
In the past year, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. It was awesome. Has nothing to do with business, but it was a great book.
I'm going to check it out. I also heard his documentary was awesome too, right? On that, I think. Yeah.
I haven't seen it. The book was awesome. Outside of that, the other one it is that I've given away a bunch is Steven Schwarzman's book that he wrote talking about when he left and they started Blackstone. One of the things it is that he said in that book that I play in my mind every day is that everything is new until it isn't. Right. He's got a great story about how Pete Peterson grew that platform. And even with all of their background, had trouble raising money. It's a good story and worth the read.
I'll have to check it out. Question number 3. What are you most curious about right now?
What am I most curious about right now? I'm really curious about what's going to happen over this next kind of 12 months with U.S. politics and kind of geopolitics and how that's going to affect just normal everyday decisions it is that people are making. Like all of us spend a bunch of time it is trying to raise money, take over the world, save the princess, get our name in headlights and all that other, get our name in lights and everything. But there's some fundamental things that is day to day it is that I think our country's at risk on that make all of that stuff irrelevant.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. Next question. Favorite leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
Wow. I need to phone a friend. Favorite leadership quote? I don't know.
Or theme. It can be a theme. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Actually, you know what? One it is that I remember exactly when it is that I heard it, what I was wearing in the cigar that I was smoking in Greenwich, Connecticut. We're walking down Greenwich Avenue and a friend of mine said, don't forget, the contracts are for the divorce. They're not for the marriage. And one of that's stuck with me for a long, long time as we're kind of growing business and doing deals.
Okay, got it. Number one way that you use ChatGPT?
To simplify simple marketing operations and conversations, right? Like we spend a bunch of time trying to figure out a way to articulate, get out of our brain something onto paper. And we've used different nuances of that. It is to kind of formulate, reformulate, and articulate thought.
Excellent. Second to last question. If there is one big domino, if you can knock it over in the first quarter of 2024, that would make the biggest difference for your company, your investors, right? The borrowers, what would that domino be in the next 90 days?
For us, we have a deficit to demand on capital as number one. So increasing distribution with us. We've had 30 institutional placement agent conversations probably in the last 2 weeks. I would say that that's number one. Number two is no matter how much I pray, God hasn't given me 25 hours in a day. There's just more shit to do than day to do it, right?
That's true. That's why ChatGPT saves you a little bit of time, a little bit of energy to make things a little more, give you a little bit of time back. Hey, Jeremy, it's been more than a pleasure. This is the last question, and then we'll wrap it up, and you can remind everyone where to find you. So, after all your success, helping all the people you've helped, doing all the amazing things you've done, what do you practice to stay most centered in your values, but also stay encouraged to charge forward to reach even higher heights?
I think a lot of that is your kind of own personal habits and disciplines. And, when you read some of the things of like Goggins and Wilkins, Jocko Wilkins and some of these guys, it really is that you need to have discipline enough it is regardless of how it is that you feel. Because everybody wants to lose weight or get in shape, but, you don't want to give up eating donuts and sleeping in, right? And so your feelings are less important, and most people are guided by their feelings and how it is that they feel about the day or feel about the deal or feel about one thing or another. And your discipline needs to drive your habits because your habits will control your life. So for me, one of the things it is, I'm really crappy at giving myself enough credit and giving myself kind of a day off because I always feel guilty about what I'm not doing. I need to personally be better at that and realize that it's okay. It is to take time to sharpen your axe, right? Like if you're not doing things, it is to kind of manage your health and manage your mental health and your psyche. Candidly, you're going to do a shitty job tomorrow at work if you're tired and you're not focused. So take the time it is to sharpen your axe and make sure it is that you're doing good things for yourself. That's one of the things I would say. I
love it, Jeremy. Hey, I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank you for sharing the gift and knowledge of just problem solving with your clients, with investors, and helping people create and preserve wealth with capital. And keep doing what you're doing to help more people get that freedom with their capital and to grow wealth. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, remind them one last time, what's the best place for them to find you?
You can reach out. It's jb-capital.com. You can reach out there, find us on any social channels, or pick up the phone and call us. So we'd love to hear from you. If you're looking from an investor standpoint or a borrower standpoint and you want just kind of a simple way of looking at things, you can get pretty candid, straightforward, friendly advice. Amazing. Thank you, Jeremy. I also want to thank all of our listeners for listening to the episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, also streamed on Expert CRE Secrets podcast as well, and YouTube channels. I want to encourage you to take
action right now with what you've heard with building wealth. We believe that not having a clear plan is the enemy, but being proactive and having a plan and then hiring a team or building a team can help you create and preserve more wealth in an amazing way with tax flow, debt flow, and cash flow. If you want to get a great resource, we believe we have a great book on that called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. Hit #1 bestseller. We have people like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank in the book, and we call our proven playbook for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when exiting any asset of any kind. Go to Amazon to check that out, or just go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. And as well, remember, friends don't let friends go into a 1031 exchange without having a backup plan available. So we offer the best 1031 exit plan. We believe it's the #1 plan for anyone who's out there who's doing a 1031 exchange and wants the option for not only a Delaware blockbuster strategy, a regular blockbuster 1031, but also the Netflix deferred sales trust, so that you're never caught, just buying a deal you don't want to buy and going into debt you don't want to go into, and you'd rather diversify and invest with someone like Jeremy Hill, which would be an amazing way to get even excess cash flow and get timing on your side. Just go to experttaxsecrets.com for that. That being said, appreciate everyone out there. Please share this with someone who could be of encouragement.